reported that now there are confirmed cases 25,352, including 5,952 severe cases. In total, 52,045 cases are cured and discharged. Fatal cases 3,012. Reported confirmed cases 80,409 and suspected cases 522. In accumulative terms, close contacts traced 669,025 and close contacts still under medical observation 32,870. In Hubei province, the new confirmed cases 134, including 131 in Wuhan. New cured and discharged cases 1,923, including 1,426 in Wuhan. New fatal cases 31, including 23 in Wuhan. There are confirmed cases 24,085, including 21,050 in Wuhan. In this figure, it includes the severe cases 5,788, including 5,342 in Wuhan. For cured and discharged cases, 40,479, including 26,316 in Wuhan. Fatal cases, 2,902, including 2,305 in Wuhan. Confirmed cases, 67,466, including 49,671 in Wuhan. New suspected cases, 67, including 61 in Wuhan. Now, there are 315 suspected cases, including 247 in Wuhan. Yesterday, between 0 and 24 o'clock, March the 4th, the newly increased overseas imported confirmed cases too, both in Zhejiang. By the end of yesterday, in total, 20 confirmed cases are reported from overseas importation. From Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, altogether 156 cases reported, including 104 from Hong Kong SAR, 10 from Macau SAR, and 42 from the Taiwan region. Outside Hubei, the newly increased confirmed cases in other provinces, 5, and the suspected cases, 76, and there is no fatal case. For severe cases, the number is dropped by 20. By yesterday, in total terms, the proportion of cured case to the suspected cases has been expanded or increased to 17.8%. That means we are enjoying a sound momentum in the treatment and the cure of the cases. We will continue to focus on the treatment and utilize the high-end and leading expertise in this regard. Now we will have the Q&A. Please focus on today's theme and put forward your questions. Please identify yourself first. Now the first question. On the right, on the front row, the second lady reporter, please. Thank you, DG Mi. From CCTV, we noticed that in the evening of March the 2nd, the leadership team worked out a circular concerning the spring plowing. Could you please give us more details, especially the context of such a policy circular? We will have DG Pan to answer your question. Just as you have said, the leadership team worked out a policy circular, and it is of the highest level over the past years. At such a crucial stage of the epidemic control and spring plowing, indeed, it is of a very significant time point. The circular puts forward very specific requirements, fully demonstrating the priority attached by the CPC Central Committee and the State Council. This year is truly a special year, and we need to ensure the harvest of grains and food. As you know, this year is the year for the comprehensive realization of the Xiaokang society, and also a critical year for the final success against poverty. Also, Chinese economy is experiencing the downward trend, and we are affected by the epidemic. President Xi Jinping emphasizes that in the time of difficulties, we should stabilize agriculture and guarantee food security. So this circular, the agricultural guideline, is indeed an implementation of President Xi's instruction, and it's a solid basis for agricultural activities. We must make every effort to implement the policy guidance. This year, we are also at a critical moment. The epidemic containment has put forward new challenges for the spring farming. We need to guarantee the timely agricultural activities to ensure this year's harvest. This policy guideline is problem-based or issue-driven, and it is helping the localities to ensure the orderly conduct of agricultural activities. And also, as the moderator has mentioned, today this is the awakening of the insects day in the lunar calendar, and at this critical time, such a policy circular can push forward the smooth and orderly conduct of agricultural activities throughout the country, and this is a very good start, as it will help us to achieve harvest this year. Thank you. Let's continue. On the left, on the front row, the first reporter, close to the aisle, please. Thank you. From Hong Kong China Review, on March the 3rd, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs notifies the wild swine incident and the swine flu in Hubei. So could you please share with us more details on that? We will have DG Yang to answer your question. Thank you very much for your question. We know that for animal disease and animal health, they are of critical importance to livestock safety and security. Last year, we had 3 incidences of such wild swine flu. And this year we had the one you have just mentioned.
So it has been a drastic decrease compared with that of last year. For this year, for wild birds and 2 domestic birds, avian influenza were reported. The intensity of the avian influenza outbreak was similar with that of the previous years. Our comprehensive analysis showed that the avian influenza unfolding has been stable this year. The African swine flu and avian influenza flu happened this year have again an alert for us that the animal diseases may come from different sources. In particular, the African swine flu has a broad infection source, and we have a big scale in raising. There is a long borderline. The risks from the wild animals are difficult to be controlled, so we should never slack our efforts. Recently, we've convened video conferences, published some circulars, and made comprehensive deployment, contextualized the policies in different localities, summarized the past experiences, and revised the 2020 African swine flu and avian influenza emergency response plan, which is already released on our official website. For the next steps, we will do a good job in the 3 following areas. First, further prevention against the African swine flu. Second, the spring vaccination for the prevention against avian influenza, and also the foot and mouth diseases, And third, we will further promote the implementation of this emergency plan. During the implementation impacted by the epidemic of COVID-19, we are still understaffed in the epidemic prevention on swine and avian influenza. We ask the rural authorities to innovate working methods and try all the means within their capacity to implement the policies, hold individual farms accountable to ensure that we can take the swine and influenza, avian influenza under control. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the second row on the right side, please. Thank you. From the Farmers Daily, we've learned that the fishery sector has been influenced by COVID-19. So what are the specific measures by the Ministry of Agriculture to respond to such challenges? I'd like to ask DG Zhang Xianliang from the Fishery Department to take the question. In the agriculture sector, the farming of the aquatic products takes up more than 98%, so it's important for us to stabilize the produce. From South China to North China, business have started, influenced by COVID-19. Things are a little bit different this year. Some of the aquatic products find it difficult to access markets. The products are still in the ponds, so we will step up efforts in the following 5 areas. First, focus on the resumption of business of processors. Help the processors to expand capacity, increase the inventory. Second, focus on the seedling to facilitate the capacity expansion of the seedling manufacturers, improve the allocation, ensure the connection between supply and demand. The current seedling capacity has been resumed to over 80%. Third, focus on the facility maintenance and guide the farmers to clear the ponds, disinfect the ponds, and cleansing the drainage system, upgrade the facilities, prepare with the stockpiling of the feeds. And the next item is for the prevention against diseases and establish an alert system. The medicines are prepared for possible diseases among aquatic produce. And fifth, focus on the structural adjustment in technical guidance, the water cycling system, and the green manufacturing practices, optimize the production mix. Meanwhile, our ministry has also made deployment to accelerate subsidy distribution and to subsidize the crew members in their fishery practices and resume their business incrementally and well managed. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the second row on the left side, please. Thank you. Economic News Daily. Previously, Ministry of Agriculture has included fertilizers and pesticides into the State Council's list for the daily necessity assurance. What about the production capacity of the producers of fertilizers and pesticides? Can they meet the needs of the spring plowing? I'd like to ask DG Zhang Yanqiu to take the question. During our response to COVID-19, what has been our efforts in the preparation of fertilizers and pesticides, seeds, and the agriculture tools? For many years, the supply was around 1.5 to 2 times that of demand. During the COVID-19 response, the major problem was the disruption to the supply chain of agriculture materials and supplies. A major reason was because of the disruption to transportation. Many of the raw materials cannot be transported to where they are needed. Shortly before, the Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs jointly issued a notice on servicing the supplies to ensure agricultural materials, and agricultural materials are included into this necessity list. Enterprises can download the permits online. There are no stops, no checkups, and no pay tolls collected on the transportation vehicles which transport these materials for agricultural tools materials into 1,500 counties in 25 provinces. Feedback has shown that 78% of the highways are now smooth. And the second question is on the resumption of business. To deal with understaffing and the smooth transportation of products out and smooth transportation of the raw materials into where they are needed. There has been good progress in clearing the transportation. 26 key seed companies have seen a resumption of 92%, and 62% of the production capacity are now in operation, 10 percentage points higher than that of last year. For fertilizers, phosphate producers, 62% of the production capacity has been resumed, and for the potassium manufacturers, 88% of the fertilizers have resumed their businesses. For the pesticide, among 1,400 manufacturers, 70% have resumed their businesses. In particular, those most needed for the current stage, like the oil seeds and wheat. 90% of the seed manufacturers have resumed their business. So these can definitely meet the needs for the spring plowing. Second, according to our survey, 98% of the outlets for the seed selling have opened, 30 percentage points higher than the previous 2 weeks. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the third row on the left side, please. Thank you. From Hong Kong Economic Herald. Impacted by the epidemic, most of the farms raising pigs cannot resume operation on time. What is the situation now? What will be the targeted measures adopted to resume the operation of pig farms?
DG Yang to answer the question. Thank you for your interest in the pork production. What you have described are indeed the real situation. People are very concerned about the pork production, and the CPC Central Committee as well as the State Council are following very closely the pork production. And driven by the market demand, the pork production has been on the rise. As far as the information shows, the pork production has been growing at 8%. Compared with the same period last year, and we've already achieved this year's target of the resumption of pork production. Despite the epidemic of COVID-19, the localities remain unchanged in terms of the targets for pork production, and we will try to recover the pork production up to the normal level, and we're going to work on 6 aspects. First, strengthen the accountability system. The State Council has already approved our ministry's objective and the objectives have already been distributed among the provinces. We will continue to have the vegetable basket accountability system to ensure the implementation. Second, to timely address the negative impact caused by COVID-19, just as you have mentioned. We will continue to address bottlenecks and problems in the resumption of production, and we will make sure smooth transportation of the relevant materials and the pork to ensure the sound operation of the supply chain. Also, together with the relevant government authorities, we are going to implement the subsidy policies for farmers. And also, we are to implement the relevant policies, in particular for pig farms and relevant aspects of the pig farm operation. Then bottlenecks would be addressed, and new emerging problems will be quickly addressed. Also, we will accelerate the improvement and upgrading of the production facilities. Last year, the ministry had an initiative to invest 44.7 billion RMB yuan to help 33,000 rural households to increase pork production. Also, we strengthen the technical guidance. We work out the monthly and quarterly reports and conduct trainings to help the rural households, especially the pig farm owners, to improve their technical capacity, hoping that our objectives can be achieved. Thank you. Let's continue on the left, on the third row, the first reporter close to the aisle. Thank you. I'm from the ntv.cn. We know that affected by COVID-19, the inventory of the aquatic products becomes a problem. So how to ensure the safety and security of such products? We will have DG Zhang Xianliang to answer the question. Yes, I know that this is a hot topic, and the ministry is following very closely this issue. For many years, we have worked out a sound mechanism, and every year we have sample tested for more than 5,000 batches, and over the past years, the pass rate for such a test has been kept above 95%. So the majority of the producers can refrain from using the potential harmful medicines, and also to guard against the risks of misuse of the antibiotics. We have launched two initiatives. First, we enhanced the surveillance and monitoring of the use of the antibiotics and animal medicines. We have adopted a stringent approach against the malpractices. And second, we offered more animal health support. The relevant experts and technicians are mobilized to offer technical guidance to the farmers and guard against the potential risk of major animal diseases. Thank you. Let's continue our Q&A. On the left, on the front row, the gentleman close to the aisle, please. Thank you, DG Mi, from Chinese Families News. We noticed that yesterday evening, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs circulated a notice to ban the wildlife trading. And I've carefully studied the list. The Chinese tortoise and the bullfrog are not included in the list. So does that mean we can have and eat these animals? We will continue to have DG Zhang Xianliang to answer the question. Yesterday, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs worked out this policy document. This policy document is designed to help the localities to implement the policy guidance from the State Council. And we base this policy document on the relevant laws and the regulations. The scope of the sound management has been identified. At the moment, the aquatic animals are divided into two groups. The first is rare and endangered species. So for such animals, they will be managed following the relevant conventions. Another group is also the rare animals, and they will follow the domestic laws and regulations. As for the animals that you have mentioned, the relevant national laws and regulations have made it very clear that fish and aquatic products are not included in the list. The reptiles that you have mentioned are animals that I want to mention here, like the Chinese tortoise and the bullfrogs. So, shall they be managed as aquatic products or the land-based product animals? For this question, we have discussed with the National Administration of Forest and Grassland. We have followed the relevant lists and the ministerial regulations. So for animals included and the reptiles included in the list, they are clearly specified as animals on our aquatic products list. So for Chinese tortoise and bullfrogs and U.S. frogs introduced,
they can be raised and are edible. Thank you. Next question, journalist from the third row on the right side, please. Thank you. With the China Daily. Director Pan has also mentioned, impacted by the COVID-19, there are new problems cropped up in the spring plowing, like the understaffing and the insufficiency in the supply of raw materials. Will this impact the harvest goal? I'd like to ask DG Pan to take the question. Frankly speaking, spring plowing in this season has met unprecedented problems. Under the firm leadership of the State Council and the Party Central Committee, our ministry has collaborated with other ministries and adopted an array of measures to promote the resumption of business, supply the raw materials, and deal with bottleneck issues to minimize the impact from COVID-19 on the spring plowing. The spring plowing is resumed in an orderly and well-managed fashion. Coming back to your question on harvest goals, the annual harvest includes the winter wheat and the spring plantation. For this year, the winter wheat produce is better than that of last year, so we have a solid foundation. And for the early rice and the autumn grain, we see good intention among the farmers. We've been surveying the progress of the spring plowing. It is similar with that of previous years. As long as we continue with the firm actions, guide the farmers to implement these policies, I think we are confident in realizing the annual harvest goal. We will focus on 3 jobs. First, have an accountability system for the rice bag abundancy. This year, the spring plantation will be an important part in the annual performance review. Province must stabilize their production as that of the previous year, and at the end of the year they will be checked. And also, such responsibility need to be delegated to different counties and hold each county accountable. Second, we need to galvanize the farmers to plant the rice. The country has increased the procurement price of rice, releasing a positive signal to incentivize farmers to plant rice. We also have some subsidies to ensure the revenue and profits of farmers and protect their enthusiasm in planting rice. Third, we need to have very precise services and guidance. Contextualized policies will be adopted in different provinces and counties. In particular, online approaches will be used to channel experts' advice to farmers, online taking of questions, and online training to the farmers. We also need to do a good job for the prevention against the drought and the flood and pests to minimize the potential impact. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the 4th row on the right side, please. Thank you. With the CNR, we've noticed that in certain places, the raw materials for the spring plowing have been restricted. What is the major problem currently, and what is the potential solution? I'd like to ask DG Zhang to take the question. Yes, at this special season, the roadblocks along the transportation ways are the major reasons. Businesses need to resume their operation. In particular, those sealed-off villages need to open the doors and remove the roadblocks to welcome the raw materials for the spring production. The major difficulty is still in Hubei province, which was heavily hit by the epidemic. The assurance of supply of agricultural materials to Hubei is also the bottleneck towards the solution of the national shortage in supply. We've received 193 hotline calls giving us feedback on the difficulty in agriculture, and 62 of the calls were from Hubei. We collaborated with Hubei Provincial Agricultural Administration, and we had a holistic arrangement. We admit the difficulty of epidemic prevention and control. We also have to admit that the springtime waits for no one. So Hubei province has worked out a timetable like before the 10th of March. The seeds of the rice must be prepared. Before the 20th of March, the scheduling for the wheat diseases and the rice diseases, the medicines must be in place. And before April, the summer rice preparation must be ready. Those that can be solved by Hubei province will be solved by Hubei province. Hubei can provide 300 kilograms of the early rice seeds, and for the mid-year seeds, they have a half of the seeds needs in a gap. So we've asked Hunan province and Gaoke of Jiangxi province and Xianyan of Hunan province to allocate the seeds for the mid-year rice to Hubei. Hubei also expressed that they need 1.29 tons of potassium fertilizer. So we arranged manufacturers to provide this amount and to cover the gap. MIIT has also allocated Jinzheng Group to meet the gap of other fertilizers. They also need that. They also say they need 2,000 tons of pesticide, and the Academy of Agriculture has mobilized several groups to provide the needed pesticide. And we believe once the gap in Hubei is met, the national goal can be met. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the fourth row on the left side, please. Thank you. From China News Review Service. It was pointed out that the two-season rice must be restored in well-conditioned regions. What are the considerations by the Ministry of Agriculture? What will be the measures adopted to restore the production of two-season rice? Well, that's a very professional question. Early rice plus the summer rice are the so-called two-seasonal rice. In recent years, there has been some decrease in the plantation acreage because of the increase of raw materials and the increase of labor cost and land transaction fees. The profits from plantation have also decreased. That's why in some areas they have changed from the plantation of two seasonal rice to one season rice. In 2019, the plantation was 140 million mu, a decrease of 35 million mu. And for the early rice, for 7 consecutive years, there has been continuous decline. However, the two-seasonal rice is an important component of grain produce. To ensure grain security, we must ensure the plantation acreage of the two-seasonal rice cannot suffer further decline. And the important linchpin is to ensure the plantation acreage of early season rice. So, Ministry of Agriculture will focus on the 3 aspects. First, implementation of policies. This year, the procurement rice has seen consecutive decrease, and this year we have made some upward adjustment of the minimum procurement price to release this positive signal to the farmers. We've also been promoting some pilot on insurance and assurance against the weathers and assurance of profits to guide farmers to plant the two-seasonal rice.
Second, with the projects as the driving forces, together with the relevant government agencies, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs has consolidated the relevant farming projects and support the major producers of the early season rice to have efficient plowing. Also, we have ensured the appropriate and effective seedling and plowing. Now, in some provinces, it is time to cultivate the seedlings, and together with the experts, we try to increase the coverage of technical guidance. Thank you. Let's continue. On the right, on the second row, the third lady reporter, please. Thank you. From 健康报. Recently, FAO issued a warning very concerned about this potential epidemic. Also, in China, in some localities, there's a severe challenge of such insect or pests epidemic. So how to deal with such epidemics, animal epidemics? We will have DG Zhang Yanqiu. We will have Dr. Yang to answer the question. I understand that the ministry has already organized several experts' discussions and work groups. And for the locust epidemic, this has already been a regular mechanism in the ministry. So we have made some analysis concerning this year's potential locust epidemic. Experts believe that the importation of the epidemic in China is at a low level at the moment because these desert locusts like high temperature and high temperature does not afraid of the high temperature. In the western part of the country, we have the natural barriers like the mountains. So for these desert locusts, they can hardly fly over the natural barriers. And also, the local weather is not suitable for the desert locusts. So this is the experts' belief or opinion. And experts also point out even if the desert locusts come to China, we have the capacity to deal with them, as China has already enjoyed over 1,000 years of experience fighting against the locusts. The Chinese locusts differ greatly from their desert counterparts in terms of the animal features or insect features. However, we have accumulated a lot of experience in dealing with the locust disaster. We also have a well-trained professional team, and we are well equipped in terms of the pesticides and the relevant facilities. Just now, I mentioned that there's still a low risk of the desert locust epidemic. However, the ministry will keep alert and make every effort to help the relevant countries and the regions to deal with the epidemic. We will also minimize the risk of the desert locust epidemic importation. We will get prepared for the potential epidemic domestically. We've already worked on several fronts. For instance, we have worked with the relevant government agencies to set up emergency response exercise. We plan that in April in Yunnan province, we are going to have an emergency response exercise, and you are invited to join us in this exercise. Furthermore, we have strengthened the monitoring, in particular in the border areas like Yunnan. We have increased the number of sentinel sites. We hope to achieve early detection and early response. Thirdly, we have put in place the disaster relief devices, the pesticides, and etc. We are making every preparation to guard against the potential epidemic. You also mentioned another insect, that is the grassland leaf moth. I mentioned the risk of desert locust epidemic is of a very low level. However, the leaf moth you mentioned indeed is invading China. I mentioned that for the desert locust, it originates from from Africa. However, for leaf moth, it originates in the east, in the Asia, and last year it has already invaded China. and we found that more than 1,600 mu of agricultural land have been affected by the insect. The grain production loss caused by the epidemic is quite large, even though it has not caused damage to the corn production. Experts found that leaf moth is quite different from other moths. In the southwest and South China, the local conditions are quite favorable for the growth of the leaf moth, and so the species has already settled down in China. According to our surveillance, this year's leaf moth will have an early migration to the north, and this year we're going to be faced with a high risk of this insect epidemic. So we are following the principles of early detection and early response. Let me share with you the efforts we have made. First, we have worked out the emergency response plans based on last year's experience. This emergency response plan has already been distributed to the localities. Secondly, we have put in place the response equipments and materials. Last year, we had already allocated 15 million RMB yuan for the epidemic response. And this year, we have also distributed funds to deal with the epidemic. Secondly, we have increased the emergency response level and have been put on alert. So in the various localities which have the big potential to be affected, we set up the sentinel points and also put in place the monitoring equipments. And also we have people on ground to have the around-the-clock monitoring and alert. Fourthly, we have the close monitoring. Since the winter last year, actually, since December last year, 6 provinces and municipalities are mobilized and requested to monitor and respond to the leaf moth epidemic.
So we have reduced the burden. We've also cut off the migration to northern China. Down the road, we will continue to work closely, monitor closely, and adopt an early detection, a local accountability system to implement the prevention control methods. We are convinced and we are confident to fight off the leaf moth. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the fourth row on the right side, please. Journalist in white. Thank you. From China Agriculture and Rural Areas magazine, Media Infusion, we know Hubei province produces one of the biggest acreage of rice. And Director Zhang has mentioned it is a critical time for the early season rice plantation. So what is the situation of the supplies for agricultural produce? I'd like to ask Director General Zhang to take the question. Thank you. I have said that the solution to Hubei's difficulty depends on the national help. The province alone can hardly deal with the difficulties because the raw materials and seeds and others for the plantation are under shortage. businesses find it difficult to resume operation. Therefore, Hubei province has to depend on the national help. Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs has established a dedicated committee to ensure the supply of raw materials. Ministry of Agriculture has made holistic arrangements across the country. We've also been collaborating with MIIT, Ministry of Transportation, Market Supervision, Administration, and the Rural Cooperative Administration to establish allocation and coordination system. 31 provinces across the country have also been mobilized. They've established a provincial agricultural material supply mechanism. Once there is request from Hubei, the whole country is mobilized to support as needed. We've also mobilized 360 seed manufacturers, 280 pesticide manufacturers, 1,400 fertilizer manufacturers. And all these enterprises have been connected on an app once there is need arising in Hubei. Once there is need arising from the most heavily hit region, the agricultural material manufacturers will coordinate on this app and on this network of coordination to meet the needs. And down the road, we will continue to accelerate the resumption of business by the manufacturers and clear the roadblocks along the highways. A major bottleneck is poor transportation capacity. Therefore, we like to call on Ministry of Transportation, transportation authorities, logistic service providers, and the transportation companies to prioritize the supply of raw materials for agricultural plantation because the season and the timing wait for no one. And influenced by the epidemic, the rural agricultural material manufacturers were also hit. And the seedlings for livestock, in particular the hatcheries for chicken, suffered from major loss. We urge the hatcheries to restart the business. We will also reduce taxes and provide favorable policies in financing and the accessing to loans so as to reboost their energy for reproduction. In the interest of time, we can take the last question, journalist from the fifth row on the left side. Thank you, from Wenhui-Bao. It is a critical time for the spring plantation. The plantation of rice along with the fishery aquatic produce have benefited the farmers. What about the situation in this year? Thank you for your question. Thank you for your interest in the comprehensive raising of rice and fish. In recent years, this sector of business has developed rapidly. In 2019, the plantation and fishery raising acreage has reached 35 million mu, producing 2 million tons of aquatic products and 17 million ton plus rice. Per capita income and per household income has also increased by a big margin. So one paddy field with the fishing pond have become an important poverty alleviation business in many areas. And this form of business has mobilized and incentivized farmers to plant rice while raising the fish. Currently, we have moved into a crucial time for the spring plantation. Localities have great enthusiasm to continue this comprehensive business format. And to realize the success, we need to have a reasonable plantation area planned. The technical guidelines are already in place to help the farmers and control the proper plantation acreage and ensure a very healthy biological environment in the plantation and the fishery. We will continue to do a good guidance for the farmers in 3 areas. First, the consolidation of the field pads. Second, good selection of the seeds and the proper selection of the good varieties and shorten the cycle of plantation. And the third, good water quality control to ensure that good rice and good fish harvest at the same time. Thank you. With that,